The lecture hall fell silent as scalding coffee dripped down Eliza Bennett's faded blue blouse. 10 years ago, but the memory still burned hotter than the liquid had. Standing frozen before 300 classmates at Brighton University's prestigious business leadership seminar, she watched as Thaddeus Blackwood, heir to the Blackwood Empire and campus royalty, stared at her with those glacial blue eyes. "Maybe next time stick to serving coffee instead of pretending you belong here, scholarship girl," he drawled, earning snickers from his entourage of trust fund sycophants. Eliza's hands trembled as she clutched her drenched notes. 3 days of research ruined in an instant. She'd worked night shifts at the campus cafe for 2 years to afford this program, while he'd probably never even seen a bill in his life. "Mr. Blackwood," Professor Harrison had intervened, but the damage was done. Eliza had fled, humiliation burning brighter than any ambition. Present day, New York City. "Miss, you can't go up there. Miss!" Eliza ignored the receptionist's protests as she marched toward the private elevator of Blackwood Tower. At 32, she no longer resembled the timid scholarship student from Brighton. Her second-hand clothes had been replaced by a carefully curated wardrobe from consignment shops that screamed competence, if not luxury. Her resume boasted impressive accomplishments, though each had been earned through double the effort of her privileged peers. "The meeting starts in 10 minutes and Vanguard Solutions won't wait," she called back, jabbing the elevator button. "I'm representing Horizon Media, and Mr. Blackwood specifically requested our proposal." That was a stretch of the truth. Blackwood Enterprises had reached out to Horizon, yes, but her boss was supposed to be here. His sudden emergency golf tournament had landed this presentation in her lap with 6 hours' notice. The elevator doors slid open to reveal the most spectacular view of Manhattan she'd ever seen. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the empire that the Blackwood family had built over generations. The reception area alone was larger than her entire apartment. "You must be lost," came a voice like chilled whiskey. Eliza turned slowly, her heart stuttering as she faced the man who had haunted her nightmares for a decade. Thaddeus Blackwood had only grown more imposing with age. His once boyish features had hardened into sharp angles, the playboy smirk replaced by a businessman's calculated appraisal. The tabloids weren't wrong when they called him the executioner, famous for dismantling companies with surgical precision and zero mercy. "Mr. Blackwood," she stated, extending her hand with a confidence she didn't feel. "Eliza Bennett, Horizon Media." His eyes narrowed slightly, studying her face as if trying to place a half-forgotten melody. "Bennett," he repeated, making no move to accept her handshake. "Where's Richardson?" "Unavailable. I'll be presenting our proposal." A muscle twitched in his jaw. "I don't work with understudies, Ms. Bennett. This meeting requires decision-makers, not assistants." The old Eliza would have retreated, apologized, disappeared. But 10 years of fighting for every opportunity had forged something steelier in her spine. "I am the creative director for this account," she replied, letting her hand drop casually to her side rather than appear rejected. "Every concept in that proposal is mine. Every strategy, every projection. Richardson may sign the checks, but this campaign, it's all me." For 3 excruciating seconds, Thaddeus said nothing. Then, unexpectedly, the corner of his mouth twitched. "You have exactly 30 minutes to convince me you're not wasting my time," he said, turning toward the boardroom. "The clock started the moment you stepped off that elevator." As Eliza followed him, adrenaline coursing through her veins, she caught her reflection in the mirrored wall. Gone was the coffee-stained girl from Brighton. In her place stood a woman with fire in her eyes and rehearsed numbers in her head. What she didn't know, couldn't possibly know, was that Thaddeus Blackwood never took meetings with companies as small as Horizon Media, or that he'd specifically requested her by name after seeing her work featured in Adweek, or that he remembered every detail of that day at Brighton, though for entirely different reasons than she did. The boardroom doors closed behind them with the quiet finality of a chess game beginning. Neither player realized they were about to compete for something far more valuable than a business deal. Impressive, Thaddeus murmured, studying the presentation slide showcasing Horizon Media's campaign strategy. Eliza tried not to look stunned. In the 43 minutes since she'd started, 13 minutes over his arbitrary deadline, which he hadn't enforced, Thaddeus had remained virtually expressionless. His executive team, 5 men and 2 women in suits that probably cost more than her rent, had asked pointed questions that felt more like traps than inquiries. The approach is unconventional, she acknowledged, but Blackwood Enterprises isn't just acquiring tech companies anymore. You're reshaping industries. Your public image should reflect that evolution, not just your net worth. A muffled snort came from Gerald Winston, Blackwood's notoriously difficult CFO. Bold of you to tell us what our image should be considering your firm's modest portfolio. Sometimes the most innovative perspectives come from unexpected places, Mr. Winston, Eliza replied smoothly. Like how Blackwood started in a garage in Queens before becoming... She gestured to the opulent surroundings. All this, something flickered across Thaddeus's face. Surprise, perhaps, that she knew that particular detail about his family history. It wasn't in the company's polished origin story they fed to the media. Thank you, Ms. Bennett, Thaddeus said, rising suddenly. The others scrambled to their feet, a well-trained response to their leader's movements. We'll be in touch. Eliza gathered her materials, refusing to show disappointment. She'd given it everything, stayed up all night perfecting the pitch, rehearsed until her roommate Luna threatened to move out. In the elevator, she exhaled shakily. At least she'd faced him as an equal this time. No coffee stains, no tears, no running away. The doors opened to the lobby, and she nearly collided with a woman carrying a stack of garment bags. Sorry, they exclaimed in unison. Mia, I thought you were meeting me upstairs, came a familiar voice. Thaddeus Blackwood stood by the reception desk, phone against his ear, scowling. Traffic was insane, the woman Mia explained, and you've changed suit preferences 3 times this week. I brought options for the charity gala. Eliza tried to slip past unnoticed, but Thaddeus's gaze locked onto her. I'll call back, he said abruptly into the phone before ending the call. Ms. Bennett. She turned, professional smile in place. Yes? You're taking the wrong exit. The car is waiting on the east side. Eliza blinked in confusion. I don't have a car. You do now. We're not finished. Before she could respond, his hand was at the small of her back, guiding her toward a different set of doors. The brief contact sent an unexpected jolt through her body. Mr. Blackwood, I've completed my presentation. If you have follow-up questions, we could schedule. I don't schedule follow-ups. I make decisions. The doors slid open to reveal a sleek black Bentley. I need to see the Brooklyn waterfront development site. You claimed your campaign could transform public perception of the project from corporate invasion to community renaissance. Prove it. Now? Eliza asked incredulously. His expression remained impassive. Problem? Every instinct screamed this was unprofessional, impulsive, and probably inadvisable. But the account would save Horizon from financial collapse, and her career from stagnation. No problem, she replied, sliding into the Bentley's butter-soft leather seats. The drive to Brooklyn was filled with tense silence, broken only by Thaddeus's occasional calls. Eliza took the opportunity to study him surreptitiously. The harsh lines of his face softened when he wasn't performing for his executives. Once, when his assistant called about his sister's birthday gift, she caught a glimpse of the man beneath the mogul, someone who remembered preferences and cared about details. Your presentation mentioned creating green spaces within the development, he said suddenly, ending a call. Why? Because communities need gathering places that don't require spending money, she replied. Parks create belonging. Belonging creates loyalty. He studied her with newfound interest. Most consultants tell me to maximize retail space. Most consultants haven't lived in a neighborhood being revitalized until no one who lived there originally can afford to stay. His eyebrow arched. Personal experience? Eliza hesitated. My mother lost her apartment of 20 years to a luxury conversion. Something unreadable crossed his features as the car stopped at the waterfront. The neglected industrial stretch had spectacular views of Manhattan, precisely why developers coveted it. "Show me," he said simply. For the next hour, Eliza walked the site with Thaddeus, painting verbal pictures of what his development could become. Not just luxury condominiums, but a true neighborhood with affordable housing components, community, spaces, and local businesses. "You're not saying what I expected," Thaddeus admitted as they stood at the edge of the pier, the late afternoon sun casting golden light across the water. "What did you expect?" "The usual hollow promises about honoring the community's character while suggesting we gut it completely." Eliza laughed, the sound surprising both of them. "Is that why you dragged me out here? To catch me in corporate doublespeak?" For the first time, Thaddeus Blackwood smiled, a real smile that transformed his face from merely handsome to breathtaking. "Partly, and partly because I wanted to see if you really believe what you're selling." Their eyes locked, and for a moment neither spoke. The intensity of his gaze made her heart race in a way that had nothing to do with professional ambition. The spell broke when his phone chimed. He glanced at it and frowned. "The gala, I need to go." As they walked back to the car, Eliza gathered her courage. "Why did you really request me for this presentation? There are dozens of better-known creative directors in the city." Thaddeus paused, his hand on the car door. "Your campaign for that struggling bookstore in the village, the one that increased their business by 200%. You saw that? I bought the building because of it, then kept their rent the same for 10 years. He held her gaze. "Contrary to popular belief, Ms. Bennett, I don't actually enjoy being called the executioner." As the Bentley glided back toward Manhattan, Eliza realized with mounting discomfort that the memory of Thaddeus Blackwood that had fueled a decade of determination was rapidly being rewritten, complicated by glimpses of a man far more nuanced than the villain of her college nightmares. Even more unsettling was the realization that she wanted to know more. "You're going where?" Luna shrieked, sending her herbal tea sloshing dangerously close to Eliza's laptop. "The Bergman Foundation Gala," Eliza repeated, scrolling through online boutiques with mounting despair. "It's for work." Luna, her roommate of 5 years and self-proclaimed broke artist with expensive taste, circled the couch dramatically. "The gala where tickets cost more than my student loan debt? The one with actual royalty in attendance? That Bergman Gala? Apparently Blackwood wants me to see how the other half perceives his brand." Eliza chewed her lip, staring at dresses she couldn't afford. "He sent a car yesterday with an invitation." What she didn't mention was the handwritten note accompanying it. "To continue our conversation, the one about belonging. TB, so Thaddeus, I eat small businesses for breakfast. Blackwood personally invited you to the social event of the season?" Luna's eyes narrowed. "The same guy who humiliated you in college? The same guy whose photo you once used as a dartboard? It was a stress relief exercise you suggested. And it worked beautifully." Luna flopped beside her. "But seriously, Liz, what's happening here?" Eliza closed her laptop with a groan. "Nothing, it's business. Our agency needs this account." She checked her watch and grimaced. "And I have nothing to wear to a gala happening in 24 hours where the minimum acceptable attire probably costs 3 months' rent." Luna's expression transformed into a mischievous grin. "Actually, you do." 2 hours later, Eliza found herself in a Greenwich Village apartment cluttered with more fabric than a costume warehouse. Luna's cousin Vivian, it turned out, was a sample coordinator for several high-fashion designers. "This is technically tomorrow's sample for a magazine shoot," Vivian explained, holding up a midnight blue gown that shimmered like the night sky. "But they rescheduled, so it's available tonight. Just don't spill anything on it, or breathe too heavily, or sit down too quickly." "I'll basically just hover above it," Eliza promised, touching the fabric reverently. "Now," Vivian continued, circling Eliza with a professional eye, "let's talk about what we're going to do with..." She gestured vaguely at Eliza's entire being. 4 hours of emergency beautification later, Eliza barely recognized herself. The woman in Vivian's full-length mirror wore a gown that transformed her usually practical figure into something ethereal. Her hair, normally wrestled into submission for office appropriateness, fell in loose waves past her shoulders. Luna's makeup artistry had given her features a luminous quality that appeared both sophisticated and effortless. "If Blackwood doesn't sign that contract after seeing you like this," Luna declared, "he's either blind or dead inside." "It's not about," Eliza began. "Oh, honey," Vivian interrupted, adjusting the gown's neckline. "It's always about that." The Bergman Foundation Gala was held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, transformed for the evening into a fantasia of lights, flowers, and wealth so concentrated it practically had its own gravity. Celebrities, business titans, and political figures mingled under soaring ceilings, while champagne flowed as freely as the 8-figure donations being pledged. Eliza clutched her borrowed clutch, also on loan from Vivian's collection, as she navigated the entrance. Despite the invitation, she half expected to be turned away. "Ms. Bennett," a staff member greeted her smoothly. "Mr. Blackwood mentioned you would be arriving separately. He's in the Egyptian wing." Eliza followed directions through galleries transformed by strategic lighting and floral arrangements, each step on the marble floors echoing her imposter syndrome. She didn't belong here, a fact everyone around her in designer originals and family heirlooms would surely sense immediately. She found Thaddeus in conversation with an older couple, his bespoke tuxedo making him look like he'd stepped from the pages of a magazine. When he glanced up and saw her, he stopped mid-sentence. For 3 excruciating seconds, he simply stared. "Excuse me," he finally said to the couple before crossing to her with purposeful strides. "You came," he said, his voice carrying a note of surprise. "You sent a car with a rather insistent driver," she replied, summoning her professional smile. "He mentioned something about not returning without me and employment consequences." Thaddeus winced. Grayson is ex-military. His communication style can be direct. "Is kidnapping all your business associates part of your standard negotiation strategy?" The corner of his mouth twitched. "Only the exceptionally stubborn ones." His eyes took in her appearance with undisguised appreciation. "You look different." "Gee, thanks," she said dryly. "I meant," he clarified, "unexpectedly stunning. Though the unexpectedly part is my failure of imagination, not a commentary on your usual appearance." Eliza blinked, momentarily disarmed by both the compliment and his awkward delivery of it. The tabloid terror of corporate America, apparently, wasn't smooth with personal interactions. "Well," she managed, "thank you for inviting me. The venue is incredible." "It's my sister's foundation," he explained, leading her deeper into the event. "Education grants for underprivileged students. Cassandra runs it. I just write checks and make mandatory appearances." "Mandatory familial obligations. How terrible for you," she teased. He looked down at her with surprise, as if unused to being the recipient of gentle mockery. "The real punishment is the small talk. I'd rather negotiate hostile takeovers than discuss vacation homes or golf handicaps." "Poor billionaire," she said with mock sympathy, surrounded by other rich people talking about rich people problems. To her astonishment, Thaddeus threw his head back and laughed, a genuine, unrestrained sound that drew glances from nearby guests obviously unaccustomed to seeing the infamous executioner express joy. "This," he said, "is why I invited you. Everyone here either wants something from me or is terrified of me." "Who says I don't want something from you?" she challenged. "I still need that contract for Horizon." "Fair point, but you're definitely not terrified of me." His eyes held hers. "Not anymore." The moment stretched between them, charged with something that definitely wasn't professional interest. Eliza was saved from responding by the arrival of a striking woman who shared Thaddeus's piercing blue eyes. "So you're the reason my brother is smiling," the woman said, extending her hand. "I'm Cassandra Blackwood, and you must be the marketing genius he won't stop talking about." "Cassie," Thaddeus warned. "What?" "I'm being welcoming." Cassandra linked her arm through Eliza's. "Come with me, Eliza. I need to steal you for introductions while my brother remembers how to socialize without scowling. As Cassandra swept her through the gala, introducing her to Foundation board members and donors, Eliza caught glimpses of Thaddeus watching her from across the room. Each time their eyes met, something warm unfurled in her chest. A sensation, both thrilling and alarming. Later, as the orchestra began playing and couples moved to the dance floor, she felt his presence before she saw him. "One dance," he said, offering his hand. "For business purposes, of course." "Of course," she agreed, fighting a smile. "Strictly professional." But as his hand settled at her waist and he guided her effortlessly across the floor, Eliza knew she was in dangerous territory. The man holding her with surprising gentleness was becoming increasingly difficult to reconcile with the villain of her memories, or the heartless tycoon of his reputation. "What are you thinking?" he asked softly. "That I didn't expect to enjoy tonight," she admitted. "And I definitely didn't expect to enjoy your company." His eyes darkened with an emotion she couldn't decipher. "Life is full of unexpected developments, Ms. Bennett." As they swayed to the music, surrounded by the elite of New York society, Eliza realized with growing alarm that the biggest unexpected development might be her own traitorous heart, beating a little faster each time Thaddeus Blackwood looked at her as if she were the only person in the room. "The meeting's starting, boss," Maya, Eliza's assistant, announced, poking her head into the office. "Thanks," Eliza replied distractedly, staring at her computer screen. For the past week, she'd been consumed with refining the Blackwood proposal, working 16-hour days to perfect every detail. At least, that's what she told herself. In reality, she was also avoiding thinking about the night of the gala. Specifically, the moment when Thaddeus had walked her to her door and lingered just a heartbeat too long, his eyes dropping briefly to her lips before he'd stepped back and wished her good night with formal politeness. "Earth to Eliza," Maya waved. "Richardson's looking for blood after losing the Westfield account. You might want to hurry." Eliza grabbed her tablet and hurried to the conference room where her boss, James Richardson, was mid-tirade. "Complete. Disaster. 2 major accounts in 6 months gone. If we lose Blackwood too, we won't," Eliza interrupted, sliding into her seat. "The presentation is solid." Richardson's glare could have curdled milk. "It better be. They've moved the final meeting to tomorrow. Blackwood himself called." Eliza's heart skipped. Tomorrow? But we were supposed to have another week. Apparently his schedule changed. He's leaving for Tokyo on Friday. Richardson's eyes narrowed. "This is your baby, Bennett. If it tanks, so does your career." "Understood." Eliza maintained her professional composure despite the butterflies swarming her stomach. She hadn't spoken to Thaddeus since the gala. Their communication filtered through assistants and formal emails. After the meeting, she returned to her office to find an unexpected delivery. A small potted plant with unusual blue flowers. The card simply read, "For your office. It thrives even in challenging environments." TB Maya appeared in the doorway, eyes wide. "Is that from who I think it's from?" "It's a plant, not a diamond," Eliza replied, though she couldn't help smiling. "And the fact that the elusive Mr. Blackwood personally came by with it while you were in the meeting means nothing." Eliza nearly dropped the plant. "He was here, himself, in the flesh. Scared the intern so badly the poor kid spilled coffee all over himself." The memory of her own coffee-soaked humiliation flashed through Eliza's mind, followed by a surprising realization. The sting of that memory had somehow dulled. That evening, Eliza found herself standing outside Blackwood Tower, debating the wisdom of her impulse visit. The security guard recognized her from her previous presentation. "Ms. Bennett for Mr. Blackwood," she said with more confidence than she felt. "He's in the private gym, ma'am. 42nd floor." The elevator whisked her upward, giving her entirely too little time to reconsider this reckless decision. The doors opened directly into a state-of-the-art fitness facility with floor-to-ceiling windows, showcasing the glittering Manhattan skyline. And there was Thaddeus Blackwood, punching a heavy bag with focused intensity, dressed in shorts, and a fitted t-shirt that revealed a physique usually hidden beneath bespoke suits. Sweat glistened on his skin as he delivered a combination of strikes with unexpected grace. For a moment, Eliza simply stared, mesmerized by this raw, unguarded version of the man she'd only seen buttoned up and controlled. He turned suddenly, sensing her presence, and froze mid-punch. "Eliza," he said, sounding genuinely startled as he grabbed a towel. "How did you—" "Security let me up." She held up the plant. "I wanted to thank you for this. You came all the way here at 9 o'clock to thank me for a plant." Put that way, it sounded ridiculous. Heat crept up her neck. "I also wanted to ask why you moved up the presentation." Thaddeus studied her for a long moment before moving to a refrigerator and retrieving 2 water bottles. He tossed one to her with casual accuracy. "Tokyo can't be postponed. The board wants a decision on your proposal before I leave." He took a long drink. "I thought you'd appreciate the expediency." "Right," she said, deflating slightly. "Business. Efficiency. Is there another reason you think I might have changed the timeline?" There was something challenging in his tone that made her look up sharply. His eyes held that same intensity she'd glimpsed during their dance. "I don't know," she admitted. "That's the problem." He set down his water bottle and took a step closer. "What problem is that exactly?" "This," she gestured between them. "Whatever this is. 1 minute you're the arrogant businessman who humiliated me in college. The next you're sending me plants and looking at me like—" "Like what?" he prompted when she trailed off. "Like you're seeing something no one else sees." The admission hung between them, honest and vulnerable in the quiet space. Thaddeus exhaled slowly. "The day I spilled coffee on you at Brighton," he said, his voice low, "I was trying to get your attention." Eliza stared at him in disbelief. "By humiliating me? By talking to you at all?" He ran a hand through his damp hair. "I'd noticed you in advanced economics. Always prepared, always the smartest person in the room. I was 21, entitled, and had no idea how to approach someone who wasn't impressed by my last name. So you decided public humiliation was the answer?" "I decided attempting to hand you a coffee as an excuse to introduce myself was the answer. The spilling was an accident. The cruel comment afterward was—" He grimaced. Panic and pride and immaturity. Eliza processed this revelation with growing astonishment. "You've been tracking my career." "Yes." "You specifically requested me for this pitch." "Yes." "Because of a college crush from 10 years ago?" she asked incredulously. A flicker of vulnerability crossed his features. "Because when I saw your work in that industry feature, I recognized the same brilliance I'd been too cowardly to properly approach back then, and yes," he admitted, "I was curious about what became of the woman who's been the standard against which I've measured my own integrity for a decade." Eliza's breath caught. "I don't understand. That day, the coffee, what I said, it's one of my deepest regrets. Every time I've made a business decision, every time I've wielded power, I've thought about how carelessly I hurt someone who'd earned her place through merit rather than privilege." His eyes held hers. "You've been my conscience, Eliza, even though you didn't know it." The confession stunned her into momentary silence. This was so far from anything she'd imagined that she struggled to reconcile it with the narrative she'd constructed around him for years. "Well," she finally said, "that's both flattering and slightly creepy." To her surprise, Thaddeus laughed, that same unrestrained sound from the gala. "Fair assessment." "So what now?" she asked. "You hire my agency as some kind of cosmic redemption?" "I hire your agency because your proposal is brilliant," he corrected, taking another step closer. "The cosmic redemption is a bonus." She became acutely aware of his proximity, of the scent of his skin, of how the city lights through the windows cast shadows that softened his features. "And what about—" She gestured vaguely between them again. That, he said softly, would be entirely separate from any business decision. Her heart raced as he slowly reached out, giving her every opportunity to step away, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered against her cheek. I have a rule about not mixing business and pleasure, she whispered. Understandable. His thumb traced the line of her jaw. But what if I told you I've already decided to hire Horizon, regardless of what happens in this moment? I'd say that sounds convenient, she replied, though she made no move to step away. Or fated, he suggested, the corner of his mouth lifting, depending on your perspective. I don't believe in fate. What do you believe in, Eliza Bennett? The question hung between them, weighted with meaning beyond the words themselves. In his eyes, she saw not the cold executioner of corporate legend, but a man asking for forgiveness, for understanding, for a chance. Second chances, she finally answered, and reached up to press her palm against his chest, feeling his heartbeat quicken beneath her touch. I believe in earning second chances. When his lips met hers, the last brick in the wall of resentment she'd built around her memories of him crumbled completely. The kiss deepened with a decade of unspoken possibilities, gentle at first, then increasingly urgent. Eliza pulled back suddenly, breathless. The presentation tomorrow is a formality, he finished. But if you're concerned about appearances, I understand. She studied him, this complicated man who'd somehow transformed from the villain of her past to something infinitely more interesting. I've spent my whole career fighting to be taken seriously, to be judged on merit, not assumptions. I know. His gaze was steady, respectful. That's why the final meeting will proceed exactly as scheduled. My team doesn't know my decision. They'll evaluate your proposal on its merits, as will the board. And us? Thaddeus tucked his hands into his pockets, putting deliberate space between them. That's entirely your decision, Eliza. I've already made mine. The vulnerability beneath his controlled exterior moved her more than any grand gesture could have. Here was a man accustomed to commanding rooms, to being feared and obeyed, offering her complete agency over what happened next. I should go, she said softly. Big presentation tomorrow. He nodded, accepting her retreat without protest. Of course. At the elevator, she turned back. Thaddeus? Yes? Thank you for the plant. The smile that spread across his face was worth every moment of confusion that had led her here. As the elevator doors closed between them, Eliza leaned against the wall, touching her lips where the warmth of his kiss still lingered. Whatever tomorrow brought professionally, something fundamental had shifted tonight. A window opening where once there had only been walls. The boardroom of Blackwood. Tower buzzed with anticipation. Executives checked watches and whispered among themselves as Eliza methodically connected her presentation to the display system. Outside, Manhattan glittered beneath an autumn sky, buildings catching golden morning light. She felt his presence before she saw him. Thaddeus entered without fanfare, his custom suit impeccable as always, his expression unreadable. Their eyes met briefly, professionally, betraying nothing of the previous night's revelations. Good morning, she greeted everyone with practiced confidence. Thank you for accommodating the schedule change. Thaddeus took his seat at the head of the table. Ms. Bennett is presenting Horizon Media's final proposal for our rebranding initiative, after which the board will vote. His gaze swept the room. I expect unbiased evaluation based solely on merit. The subtle emphasis on his last words sent a warm current through her chest, but Eliza maintained her professional demeanor. Over the next 40 minutes, she delivered the most important presentation of her career with precision and passion, fielding questions with ease. When she finished, the CFO, Gerald Winston, leaned forward. Impressive vision, Ms. Bennett, but given Horizon's size, do you realistically have the capacity to handle an account of this magnitude? Before Eliza could answer, The boardroom doors burst open. James Richardson strode in, red-faced and slightly disheveled. "Sorry I'm late," he announced, straightening his tie. "Traffic was abysmal." Eliza froze. She deliberately not informed Richardson about the time change, knowing he would insist on taking over, and likely derail everything with his outdated approaches. "Mr. Richardson," Thaddeus acknowledged coolly. "We weren't expecting you." "Wouldn't miss it," Richardson replied with a too-wide smile, clapping Eliza's shoulder. "My protege has such creative ideas. Though I have a few suggestions to make the proposal more aligned with Blackwood's traditional image." "Traditional," Thaddeus repeated, eyebrow raised. "Exactly." Richardson beamed, oblivious to the tension. "Old money values, exclusive luxury, positioning. We can scale back those community engagement elements. Frankly, they dilute the premium brand perception." Eliza watched in horror as Richardson systematically dismantled every innovative aspect of her proposal. When he suggested replacing the waterfront park with a members-only marina, she couldn't remain silent. "That directly contradicts everything the research indicates about changing consumer values and social responsibility," she interjected. Richardson's smile hardened. "Eliza, dear, let's remember who has 30 years of experience here." "Experience in a market that no longer exists," she countered, heart-pounding. "Mr. Blackwood, the proposal I presented reflects contemporary values that—" "Ms. Bennett," Thaddeus interrupted, his expression giving away nothing. "Which version are you actually recommending, yours or Mr. Richardson's?" The room fell silent. Eliza realized this was the moment, not just for the account, but for her career, for her integrity. "Mine," she stated firmly. "Because it's not just effective marketing, it's the right thing to do." Richardson sputtered. "Now, see here." "Thank you for the clarification," Thaddeus said, silencing Richardson with a glance. "The board will deliberate. We'll have our decision by end of day." 3 hours later, Eliza sat in her small office at Horizon, methodically packing her personal items into a cardboard box. Richardson had fired her the moment they'd returned from Blackwood Tower. "You'll never work in this industry again," he'd promised, face mottled with rage. "I'll make sure of it." Luna had already texted offering her couch, "until this blows over," complete with wine and ice cream. Eliza appreciated the gesture, but the reality of starting over at 32 weighed heavily. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Roof access door is unlocked. TB." 5 minutes later, she emerged onto the rooftop garden, Horizon's unused and neglected attempt at employee wellness, to find Thaddeus Blackwood sitting on a bench, jacket off, shirt sleeves rolled up, looking uncharacteristically casual. "How did you get in here?" she asked. "I bought the building this morning," he replied matter-of-factly. "You... what?" "Technically, Blackwood Enterprises did. It's a sound investment." Eliza sank onto the bench beside him. "So you own my former workplace, that's not weird at all." "Former?" His expression sharpened. "Richardson fired you. Approximately 90 seconds after we left your office." She managed a weak smile. "Apparently, contradicting your boss in front of a client is frowned upon." Thaddeus was quiet for a moment, his jaw tightening. "The board voted unanimously to accept your proposal, the original version." "That's wonderful," she said, genuinely pleased despite her circumstances. "He didn't have the right to fire you. It's your account, your work." "It's his agency," she corrected gently. "Not anymore." Thaddeus handed her an envelope. "Blackwood is acquiring Horizon Media, effective immediately. Richardson is being offered early retirement with a generous package." Eliza stared at the envelope without touching it. "So what, now you're my boss? That's your solution?" He winced. "I admit it sounds problematic when you put it that way." "It is problematic." She stood, pacing the small rooftop. "I can't build a career being rescued by a billionaire boyfriend." "Boyfriend?" he repeated, a smile playing at his lips. "That's what you focused on? Seriously? but she couldn't help returning his smile. The point stands. I need to succeed on my own terms. I know. His expression softened into understanding. That's why the second document in that envelope is an offer from Cassandra. The foundation wants to establish an in-house creative agency for their educational initiatives. She needs a director with vision and integrity. He stood, joining her at the rooftop's edge. Someone impossible to intimidate who believes in creating genuine community value. Your sister, Eliza said slowly, wants to hire me. My sister has been looking for the right person for months. When I mentioned what happened today, she instantly recognized the qualification she values most. Which is? The courage to stand by your principles even when it costs you. His eyes held hers. That's rare, Eliza. In business and in life. The autumn breeze lifted her hair as she considered the offer. A chance to build something meaningful, to help deserving students like she had once been. And us? She asked quietly. If I'm working for your sister's foundation, no conflict of interest, no power imbalance. He reached for her hand, his touch tentative. Just two people with a complicated history trying to write a better future. Eliza intertwined her fingers with his, remembering the angry, humiliated girl she'd been and the determined woman she'd become. Perhaps the same was true for him. The entitled young man transformed through reflection and regret into someone capable of genuine change. I think, she said carefully, that I'd like to see that future. His smile, rare, genuine, transformative, made her heart skip. Does that mean you'll give me a second chance? It means, she replied, stepping closer, that maybe we're both getting one. When he kissed her this time, there was no confusion, no hesitation, just the certainty that some journeys are worth taking, no matter how unlikely their beginnings. 6 months later, you're late, Cassandra called as Eliza rushed into the foundation's headquarters, arms full of presentation boards. Subway delay, the curse of actually living on a normal person's salary, Eliza replied cheerfully. In the ice, months since taking the creative director position at the Blackwood Educational Foundation, she'd overseen the launch of 3 major initiatives and built a team of talented young designers and writers. How's the apartment hunting going? Cassandra asked, falling into step beside her. Slowly. Your brother keeps accidentally sending me listings in his building. Cassandra laughed. Subtle, he is not. Speaking of not subtle, Eliza said, what's with the photographer in the conference room? I thought our donor appreciation event wasn't until next week. A mischievous smile spread across Cassandra's face. It's not for the event. Puzzled, Eliza pushed open the conference room door to find it transformed with flowers and twinkling lights. Her creative team stood along one wall, grinning conspiratorially. And in the center stood Thaddeus, looking uncharacteristically nervous. What's happening? She asked, setting down her boards. Thaddeus approached, taking her hands in his. I had a whole speech prepared about destiny and second chances, but now that you're actually here, I'm realizing how inadequate words are for this moment. Understanding dawned as he lowered himself to one knee and Eliza's breath caught. Eliza Bennett, he said, voice steady despite the vulnerability in his eyes. You showed me that true strength lies in kindness, not power. That redemption is possible. That love can begin in the most unlikely circumstances. He produced a small velvet box, opening it to reveal a ring with a solitaire diamond. Will you marry me? For a heartbeat, Eliza saw their entire improbable journey. From coffee-stained college student to confident professional, from antagonists to allies to something profoundly more. She thought of the frightened girl who'd run from that lecture hall and the woman who now stood her ground, even against billionaires. On one condition, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Anything, he promised immediately. A smile spread across her face. You have to admit that I intimidated you first. Relief and joy transformed his features. Terrified me completely, he agreed readily. From day one. Then yes, she said softly. Yes, I will. As cheers erupted from her team and Cassandra wiped away unabashed tears, Thaddeus slipped the ring onto Eliza's finger and rose to kiss her, not as the ruthless tycoon the world knew, but as the man only she had truly seen. "Coffee?" he murmured against her lips, eyes dancing with humor. "To celebrate?" Eliza laughed, wrapping her arms around his neck. "As long as you promise not to spill it on me." "Never again," he vowed, sealing the promise with another kiss. Some lessons only need to be learned once. As their friends surrounded them with congratulations, Eliza gazed up at the man who had once been the villain of her story, now transformed into its hero. Life, she reflected, had a way of coming full circle, sometimes with unexpected detours that led exactly where you were meant to be. Emma Sinclair's day had already been disastrous when the fire alarm sent everyone rushing out of First National Bank's downtown branch. Standing on the sidewalk in her impeccable navy suit and sensible heels, she clutched her tablet to her chest, mentally calculating how this 30-minute interruption would derail her entire schedule. "The system says there's smoke on the executive floor," her assistant Jasmine whispered, scrolling through her phone. "Probably just another false alarm." Emma pinched the bridge of her nose. At 34, she was the youngest branch manager in the bank's history, a position she'd clawed her way into through sheer determination and an almost superhuman ability to never, ever waste time. Today, she had 6 back-to-back meetings, 2 loan approvals to sign off on, and a quarterly review that was already keeping her up at night. "Wonderful," she muttered. "Just what we needed." A commotion rippled through the crowd of evacuated employees. Emma turned to see a sleek black Aston Martin screech to a halt in the no parking zone directly in front of the bank. The driver's door swung open, and a man emerged with the casual confidence of someone who had never faced consequences for his actions. Parker Reed, tech billionaire venture capitalist, and according to Boston Business Magazine's latest issue, the city's most eligible bachelor, Emma recognized him instantly, having reviewed his file just last week when he'd requested a private meeting through his assistant's assistant. His company, Reed Innovations, was rumored to be planning a major acquisition that would require substantial financing. What she hadn't been prepared for was his physical presence, 6'2" of expensive suit and arrogance, with dark hair artfully tousled, and a smile that suggested he found the world endlessly amusing. He sauntered toward the bank entrance, oblivious to the crowd of evacuated employees, his attention fixed on his phone. "Sir," Emma called out, stepping forward, "the building is being evacuated. You can't go in." Parker glanced up, his steel blue eyes finding hers with an intensity that momentarily knocked the wind from her lungs. "I have a meeting," he stated simply, as if that overrode all fire safety protocols. "With whom?" Emma asked, though she already knew the answer. "Emma Sinclair." His eyes traveled over her with undisguised interest. "You wouldn't happen to know where I might find her in this chaos, would you?" Before she could respond, a firefighter approached, informing everyone they'd need to move further back from the building. In the confusion, Parker ended up beside her. "I'm Emma Sinclair," she said, extending her hand with professional courtesy while ignoring the flutter in her stomach. "And you're late, Mr. Reed." His eyebrows shot up, genuine surprise crossing his features before his trademark smirk returned. "Actually, I believe I'm right on time for our 11:30 meeting." Emma glanced at her watch. "It's 11:53. "Is it?" He shrugged. "Time is a construct, Ms. Sinclair. I find it more productive to measure my day in achievements rather than minutes." "How convenient for you," Emma replied dryly. "Unfortunately, my time is actually valuable, and I don't have the luxury of philosophical musings about punctuality." Instead of being offended, Parker's smile widened. "Ah, so you're the fire-breathing dragon my assistant warned me about." "Excuse me?" He said, and I quote, "Don't be late. She runs that place like a Swiss watch factory and has been known to eviscerate men for wasting her time." Parker's eyes gleamed with amusement. "I have to say, I'm not disappointed." Emma opened her mouth to deliver a scathing retort when the fire chief announced the all clear. It had indeed been a false alarm, Someone had burnt popcorn in the executive break room microwave. As they walked back toward the bank entrance, Parker leaned in slightly. "Since our meeting has been compromised by burning popcorn, perhaps we could reschedule for dinner tonight? I know a place where the chef makes flambe tableside, controlled fire, I promise." Emma stopped at the revolving door, turning to face him. "Mr. Reed, I don't mix business with pleasure." "Who said anything about pleasure?" he replied, though his eyes said otherwise. "I'm simply suggesting a more comfortable setting to discuss the $50 million line of credit my company needs." $50 million. The number hung in the air between them. "My office. 5 minutes," Emma said decisively, then pushed through the revolving door, leaving Parker standing outside with an expression she couldn't quite decipher, something between admiration and challenge. What she didn't know as she walked away was that Parker Reed never backed down from a challenge, and for the first time in years he'd found one that actually interested him. Emma's office was her sanctuary, meticulously organized with not a paper out of place. The wall of windows overlooked Boston's financial district, a view she rarely had time to appreciate. She stood behind her desk, reviewing Parker Reed's financial portfolio one last time before he arrived. The man's business acumen was undeniable. Reed Innovations had disrupted 3 separate industries in just 8 years. Their latest venture, sustainable energy storage systems, showed promise, but needed significant capital to scale. Hence the $50 million line of credit requests sitting on her desk. A knock at the door preceded Jasmine's head popping in. "Mr. Reed is here," she announced, her voice carrying a hint of breathlessness that Emma found mildly irritating. "Send him in," Emma replied, straightening her already straight blazer. Parker Reed filled the doorway momentarily before strolling in as if he owned the place. He'd removed his suit jacket, revealing a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled up to expose tanned forearms. Emma found herself momentarily distracted by the casual display of masculinity before mentally slapping herself back to professionalism. "Ms. Sinclair?" he greeted, extending his hand. "Shall we start over? I promise not to mention fire-breathing dragons this time." His handshake was firm, his palm warm against hers. "Please, sit." She gestured to the chair across from her desk. Parker settled into the chair with the relaxed ease of a man accustomed to being comfortable anywhere. "Nice view," he commented, nodding toward the windows. "Though I suspect you don't look up from that desk often enough to notice it." Emma raised an eyebrow. "I didn't realize my work habits were under scrutiny, Mr. Reed." "They're not, just an observation." His smile was disarming. "And please call me Parker. Mr. Reed was my father, and he was decidedly less fun." "This isn't meant to be fun," Emma replied, opening his file. "It's business." "Ah, but that's where you're wrong." Parker leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "The best business is always fun. Otherwise, what's the point?" Emma ignored the question. "Your financials are impressive, but I have concerns about the timeline for this expansion. You're projecting profitability within 18 months, which seems ambitious," Parker interrupted. "It is. But so was starting a tech company in my garage at 23, and now I employ over 2,000 people." His eyes held hers. "I don't do anything halfway, Miss Sinclair." The intensity of his gaze made Emma feel suddenly warm. She cleared her throat. "Emma," she conceded. "You can call me Emma." "Emma," he repeated as if testing how her name felt on his tongue. "Latin. Root meaning whole or universal. Fitting. You know Latin etymology? I know lots of things that might surprise you." There was that smirk again. "For instance, I know that you've been the branch manager here for just under 2 years, that you were previously at Goldman Sachs where you specialized in technology, sector financing, and that you have a reputation for being brilliantly thorough but impossibly hard to please." Emma's eyes narrowed. "You researched me." "Of course I did. I never walk into a negotiation without knowing exactly who sits across the table." His tone softened. "I also know that your loan approval rate is 12% higher than your predecessors, while your default rate is 8% lower. You're good at what you do, Emma. Very good." The compliment, delivered with such straightforward sincerity, caught her off guard. "Thank you," she said, momentarily at a loss for her usual sharp retort. Parker leaned back in his chair. "So, about that dinner." "Mr. Reed, Parker," Emma corrected herself. "I meant what I said earlier. I don't mix business with pleasure. What if I told you this line of credit wasn't just about expanding Reed Innovations? What if it was about something bigger?" Emma's curiosity was piqued despite herself. "I'm listening." "The technology we're developing could revolutionize energy storage, make it cheaper, more efficient, more accessible. We're talking about bringing sustainable power to places that have never had reliable electricity." His eyes lit up as he spoke, passion replacing the earlier cockiness. "This isn't just about profit margins, Emma. This is about changing lives." For a moment, Emma saw beyond the billionaire playboy facade to something more substantial. It was annoyingly attractive. "That's all very noble," she said carefully, "but my job is to assess financial viability, not save the world." "Why can't it be both?" Parker challenged. "Look, I need this financing, and frankly, I could go to any bank in Boston. But I chose First National because you're here, and your reputation for thoroughness is exactly what I want. I need someone who'll ask the hard questions." "And the dinner invitation?" Parker shrugged. "I work better over food. Plus, I really do want to see if you're as formidable outside office hours as you are in them." Emma should have said no. She had a strict policy against dining with clients, especially ones with reputations like Parker Reed's. But something in his expression, a mixture of challenge and genuine interest, made her reconsider. One dinner, she found herself saying, "Strictly professional, and I'll be bringing the loan paperwork with me." Parker's slow smile was like sunrise breaking across his face. "I wouldn't expect anything less." He stood to leave. "I'll pick you up at 7. "I'll meet you there," Emma countered, unwilling to cede complete control. Parker nodded, accepting the boundary. At the door, he paused. "You know, Emma, I have a feeling this is the beginning of a very interesting partnership." As the door closed behind him, Emma released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She'd just agreed to have dinner with Parker Reed, Boston's most notorious bachelor and potentially her biggest client. What had she been thinking? The answer came, unbidden. She was thinking that for the first time in longer than she could remember, someone had managed to surprise her. And despite her better judgment, she was curious to see what other surprises Parker Reed might have in store. Emma stood in front of her closet, a rare moment of indecision plaguing her usually decisive mind. She'd told herself this was just a business dinner, emphasis on business, yet here she was, 30 minutes deep into a wardrobe crisis. Her phone buzzed with a text from her sister, Olivia. "Wear the burgundy wrap dress. Shows you mean business, but also that you have a waist. And please, tell me you're not bringing that hideous banker's portfolio." Emma glanced at the leather portfolio she'd already packed with Parker's loan documents, then back at the text. How did Olivia always know? The sisters couldn't be more different. Olivia ran a bohemian art gallery in the South End, while Emma had spreadsheets for her spreadsheets, but they shared an almost telepathic connection. "It's a business dinner," Emma texted back. 3 dots appeared immediately. "With Boston's sexiest billionaire. There's no such thing as just business with a man who looks like that. I Googled him. If you don't seduce him, I will." Emma rolled her eyes but found herself reaching for the burgundy dress anyway. 40 minutes later, she handed her card to the valet at Lumiere, one of Boston's most exclusive restaurants. The maitre d' led her through the dimly lit space, past tables of Boston's elite, to a secluded corner where Parker was already seated. He stood as she approached, and Emma felt a flutter of satisfaction at the appreciative look that crossed his face. The burgundy dress had been the right choice. "You look—" Parker seemed momentarily at a loss for words, a condition Emma suspected was rare for him. "Stunning," he finally managed. "Thank you," she replied, taking her seat as the waiter appeared, with a bottle of wine. "I took the liberty of ordering the Chateau Margaux," Parker said. "Unless you'd prefer something else?" Emma raised an eyebrow. 1995? An excellent year. She caught the flash of surprise on his face. What? Bankers can't know wine? Parker's smile widened. I'm quickly learning not to underestimate you, Emma Sinclair. He nodded to the waiter who poured 2 glasses. The wine was exquisite, velvety and complex on her tongue. Emma set down her glass, determined to maintain focus. I've been reviewing your proposal and have some questions about the timeline for 327, Parker interrupted. Emma blinked. I'm sorry? That's how many words are in your loan agreement's opening paragraph. I counted them while waiting. His eyes danced with amusement. Do you always dive straight into business before the bread arrives? Emma started, then stopped, caught off guard. I suppose I do. Then let's try something different. Parker leaned forward, his voice dropping conspiratorially. Tell me something about Emma Sinclair that isn't on your impeccable resume. Or in your company bio. Emma hesitated, unaccustomed to personal conversations in professional settings. That's not why we're here. Indulge me, Parker pressed. One personal fact. Then we can discuss amortization schedules to your heart's content. Perhaps it was the wine, or the way the candlelight caught the unexpected warmth in his eyes. But Emma found herself relenting. I collect vintage typewriters, she admitted. I have 17. Parker's eyebrows rose. Now that I didn't expect. Why typewriters? My grandfather was a journalist. He had this beautiful 1936 Remington Rand Model 5 that he used throughout his career. A smile tugged at her lips, softening her features. He taught me to type on it when I was 7. Said computers were making people forget the value of choosing words carefully, since delete keys made mistakes too easy to erase. Sounds like a wise man. He was. Emma toyed with her napkin. Your turn. Something not in your Forbes profile. Parker took a sip of wine, considering. I can't whistle, he finally said. Emma laughed, the sound surprising even herself. The great Parker Reed, tech visionary and business titan, can't whistle? Not even happy birthday, he confirmed, grinning. My personal kryptonite. I've tried tutorials, hired coaches, nothing works. My lips are apparently engineered for other talents. The subtle innuendo hung in the air between them. The bread arrived, followed by appetizers Emma didn't remember ordering. Seared scallops with a truffle emulsion that melted in her mouth. So how does a Goldman Sachs wunderkind end up at First National? Parker asked, steering the conversation. Into waters both personal and professional. Emma considered deflecting but found herself answering honestly. My father had a stroke 3 years ago. I moved back to Boston to be closer to my parents. First National offered me the flexibility I needed. Family first, Parker nodded approvingly. I respect that. What about your family? Emma asked, realizing she knew nothing about his personal life despite his public persona. Something flickered across Parker's face. Vulnerability, quickly masked. Not much to tell. Father was old money, expected me to follow the traditional path. Harvard, investment banking, country club membership. I chose Stanford, dropped out to start my first company, and have been disappointing him ever since. And now you're worth billions, Emma pointed out. Surely that's earned his approval. Parker's laugh held no humor. But I made it in tech, new money, gauche and unpredictable. He passed away last year, still waiting for me to grow up and join a proper investment firm. I'm sorry, Emma said softly, glimpsing the complexity beneath his carefully crafted image. Ancient history, Parker waved dismissively, but Emma wasn't fooled. His relationship with his father had shaped him more than he wanted to admit. But it does explain why this energy storage project matters so much. It's not just about profit, it's about legacy, about building something meaningful. Their main courses arrived. Butter poached lobster for her, venison with blackberry reduction for him. The conversation flowed more easily now, moving from business to books. They both loved Ishiguro. To travel, she dreamed of visiting Kyoto. He owned a villa there and offered it to her any time. To their shared addiction to true crime podcasts. Okay, impossible question time, Parker said as they lingered over dessert, a dark chocolate souffle they'd decided to share. Best financial decision you've ever made, and worst financial mistake. Emma considered. Best was buying my condo in 2008 when the market crashed. Everyone thought I was crazy, but property in that neighborhood has tripled since then. And the worst? I invested heavily in a friend's startup. Fitness technology. It was promising, but... She trailed off. But the friendship didn't survive the business failure, Emma admitted. I lost the money and the friend. Parker nodded knowingly. The relationship usually matters more than the money. I learned that lesson too. Your turn, Emma prompted, genuinely curious. Best decision was turning down a 9-figure acquisition offer for my first company. Everyone said I was insane, but I knew it was worth more. His eyes sparkled. Sold it 2 years later for 7 times that amount. And your worst? Mistake? Parker's expression grew serious, thinking money could solve everything. My mother was diagnosed with cancer when I was building my second company. I threw money at the problem. Best doctors, experimental treatments. Missed spending actual time with her because I was so busy fixing things. He looked down. Some things can't be fixed with money. Emma reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. The gesture was instinctive, compassionate, and sent an unexpected current up her arm. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the restaurant around them seemed to disappear. Parker turned his hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. You know, for someone who doesn't mix business with pleasure, you're dangerously easy to talk to, Emma Sinclair. And you, she replied, not withdrawing her hand, are nothing like your reputation suggests, Parker Reed. The moment stretched, between them, charged with possibility. Then Emma's phone buzzed, an emergency alert from the bank. She reluctantly pulled her hand away to check it. Everything okay? Parker asked. System security alert, probably nothing, but... She hesitated, torn between duty and the unexpected connection they'd formed. But you need to check it, Parker finished for her. I understand. Emma felt a pang of regret. I should go. Parker signaled for the check. Allow me to drive you. That's not necessary. Humor me. His tone was gentle but brooked no argument. It's late, and I'd feel better knowing you got there safely. Outside, the valet brought around not the Aston Martin from earlier, but a sleek Tesla. The sustainable choice, Parker explained with a wink. I practice what I preach. The drive to the bank was brief, filled with a comfortable silence that surprised Emma. At the entrance, Parker insisted on walking her to the door. Thank you for dinner, Emma said, suddenly awkward, aware of how much she'd enjoyed his company. I'll have a decision on your loan application by the end of the week. Parker stepped closer, just inside her personal space. Is that all you're thinking about right now? The loan? Emma's heart raced. What I'm thinking is that you're a potential client and there are boundaries that shouldn't be crossed. What if I withdraw my loan application? His voice was low, teasing, but with an undercurrent of something serious. Would that solve your ethical dilemma? Don't be ridiculous. Your company needs that financing. Maybe I've found something I want more. His eyes dropped to her lips and Emma felt heat rise to her cheeks. Parker, The bank's security guard rounded the corner, startling them both. Ms. Sinclair, didn't expect to see you back tonight. The moment shattered. Emma stepped back, professional mask sliding back into place. Security alert, George. Just came to check it out. Parker cleared his throat. I should let you get to it. Good night, Emma. As he turned to leave, Emma made a split-second decision. Parker? He looked back, hope flickering across his features. About your application, I think we might be able to help you. She held his gaze meaningfully. Perhaps we could discuss the details after the approval process is complete. His slow smile was worth every professional rule she was bending. I look forward to it, he said, then walked back to his car with a lightness in his step that hadn't been there before. Inside the bank, Emma discovered the security alert had indeed been a false alarm. Standing in her darkened office, she caught her reflection in the window, cheeks flushed, eyes bright. She hardly recognized herself. For the first time in years, Emma Sinclair had forgotten to check the time all evening, and somehow that felt like the beginning of something important. 3 weeks had passed since that fateful dinner with Parker Reed, and Emma's world had tilted on its axis. The loan committee had approved Reed Innovations' $50 million line of credit, unanimously, a rare occurrence that spoke to the soundness of Parker's business proposition. The formal paperwork had been signed yesterday, which meant technically, officially, indisputably, Parker was no longer just a potential client. He was an actual client. Emma stood at her office window watching raindrops race down the glass. The gray April sky matched her mood, conflicted, stormy, with moments of unexpected clarity. Her phone buzzed with another text from Parker. "Dinner? Tonight? I know this fantastic little Ethiopian place where they don't let you use utensils. Perfect for a woman who appreciates the vintage approach to technology." A smile tugged at her lips despite her reservations. In the past 3 weeks they'd exchanged dozens of texts, none related to business. He'd sent her articles about rare typewriters. She'd shared her favorite true crime podcast episodes. It was friendly, flirtatious, and entirely inappropriate, given their professional relationship. "Can't tonight. Quarterly reports," she typed back, although the reports had been finished days ago. Jasmine appeared at her door, knocking lightly. "The board members are ready for you in the conference room." Emma smoothed her blazer armor for the battle ahead. "Thank you." The bank's quarterly board meeting was typically a dry affair. Numbers, projections, strategic priorities. Today's agenda included a special item, a vote on promoting Emma to regional director, overseeing all 7 branches in Massachusetts. It was the next logical step in her meticulously planned career trajectory, the culmination of years of 60-hour work weeks and sacrificed personal time. Board Chairman Douglas Warren, a silver-haired banking veteran with old-school sensibilities, greeted her with a paternal smile. "Emma, just the woman of the hour. We were just discussing the Reed account. Quite the coup for First National." "Thank you, sir." Emma took her seat, opening her presentation materials. "Mr. Reed's company represents an excellent opportunity. For the bank." Warren's bushy eyebrows waggled. "And for you as well, I'd imagine. Word is the regional director position is practically yours." Emma's smile remained professional. "I'm honored to be considered." "More than considered, my dear. Your numbers speak for themselves. Lowest risk portfolio in the network, highest client satisfaction scores, and now landing the Reed account." Warren leaned in conspiratorially. "The vote's a formality at this point. By this time next month, you'll have the corner office on the 35th floor. The 35th floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a private bathroom, and a salary increase that would finally let her pay off her student loans. Everything she'd been working toward." "That's wonderful news," Emma managed, ignoring the unexpected hollow feeling in her chest. The meeting proceeded as planned. Emma delivered her presentation flawlessly, fielded questions with practiced ease, and accepted early congratulations from several board members. Yet as she gathered her materials afterward, she felt strangely disconnected from her triumph. Her phone buzzed again as she returned to her office. "Quarterly reports on a Friday night? You're breaking my heart, Sinclair. At least tell me you ordered decent takeout." Before she could respond, Jasmine peeked in. "There's a delivery for you at reception." Emma frowned. "I didn't order anything." "Well, someone did, and fair warning, it's causing quite the scene." Curious and slightly apprehensive, Emma made her way to the bank's grand reception area. She stopped short at the sight before her. A vintage 1920s Underwood typewriter sat on the reception desk, polished to a mirror shine. Beside it stood a delivery person holding an enormous bouquet of burgundy dahlias, the exact shade of the dress she'd worn to dinner with Parker. A small crowd of employees had gathered, whispering excitedly. Emma approached slowly, aware of all eyes on her. A small card was tucked among the flowers. With slightly trembling fingers, she opened it. For when words need to be chosen carefully, no delete key required. P. These came with it as well, the receptionist said, handing over a thick envelope. Inside were 2 first-class tickets to Kyoto, dated for 2 weeks hence, and a handwritten note. My villa has an excellent view of the cherry blossoms this time of year. They're ephemeral, extraordinary, and shouldn't be missed, much like certain opportunities in life. Say yes. P. Heat rushed to Emma's cheeks. The gesture was extravagant, romantic, and completely inappropriate. She should be angry. She should return everything immediately. She should... Ms. Sinclair? A familiar voice cut through her thoughts. Emma turned to find Parker himself standing in the bank's entrance, looking slightly damp from the rain and absolutely devastating in a charcoal suit. The whispering among her employees increased tenfold. Mr. Reed, she acknowledged, struggling to maintain professional composure. This is unexpected. Is it? His eyes held hers, challenging. I thought I was being rather obvious. Perhaps we should speak in private, Emma suggested, acutely aware of their audience. Parker shook his head. No more private conversations, Emma. No more hiding behind professional boundaries or bank protocols. He closed the distance between them. I've respected your rules. I waited until the loan was finalized. I've played by your book. But now, I'm asking you to consider a different approach. Emma glanced nervously at the gathered employees, including several executives. Parker, this isn't the place. It's exactly the place, he insisted. We're better than the institution that's defined your entire identity. We're better to ask if that identity is truly complete. What are you asking? Emma whispered, her heart pounding. Parker ran a hand through his rain-dampened hair. I'm asking if you're happy, Emma. Truly happy. The question hit her like a physical blow. When was the last time anyone had asked her that? When was the last time she'd asked herself? She began, then stopped, the practiced response dying on her lips. Because here's what I know, Parker continued, his voice softening. I know you're brilliant at your job. I know you've earned every accolade and promotion. I know you're about to be named regional director. Emma's eyes widened. How did you... I have my sources, he said with a wry smile. I also know that when we had dinner 3 weeks ago, you forgot to check your watch. Not once. For 3 hours and 22 minutes. The specificity of his observation caught her off guard. You noticed that? I notice everything about you, Emma. His gaze was intense, unwavering, including the fact that when you talk about typewriters or your sister's art gallery or those ridiculous true crime podcasts, you light up in a way you never do when discussing interest rates. A murmur rippled through the onlookers. Emma felt exposed, vulnerable, and strangely liberated. What exactly are you proposing, Mr. Reed? She asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Parker smiled, that devastating, genuine smile that reached his eyes. I'm proposing an alternative investment strategy, Ms. Sinclair. 2 weeks in Kyoto. No phones, no quarterly reports, no professional boundaries. Just us, discovering if this connection is as extraordinary as I think it is. And if I say no, Emma challenged, though they both knew she wouldn't. Then I'll respect your decision, return to being just another client, and wonder for the rest of my life what might have been. His expression grew serious. But before you decide, there's something you should know. What's that? I've withdrawn the loan application. Emma blinked in confusion. What? But we just signed yesterday. And I called the board this morning to cancel it, Parker said. I'm financing the expansion through other channels. Why would you do that? Emma demanded, genuinely baffled. The terms were excellent. Parker stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his rain-dampened cologne. Because I don't want anything clouding what's happening between us. No professional entanglements, no ethical gray areas, just clarity. A hush fell over the reception area. Even the usually unflappable security guard was watching with rapt attention. You canceled a $50 million loan. For me? Emma couldn't quite believe it. For us, Parker corrected. And yes, some things are worth more than money, Emma. He gestured to the typewriter. I believe your grandfather would agree. Something shifted inside Emma, a wall crumbling, a perspective altering. In that moment, standing in the bank she'd given her life to, surrounded by witnesses to her most private emotions, the path forward became startlingly clear. Ms. Sinclair? Chairman Warren's voice cut through the silence. He'd apparently been drawn by the commotion. Is everything all right? Emma turned to face her mentor and champion, the man who was about to hand her everything she'd worked for. Mr. Warren, I need to speak with you about the regional director position. Warren looked between her and Parker, understanding dawning on his weathered face. I see. Perhaps my office would be more appropriate for this discussion. Actually, Emma said, her voice growing stronger with each word, I think I've made my decision. She squared her shoulders. I'm declining the promotion. A collective gasp rose from the onlookers. Warren's bushy eyebrows shot up. Declining? But why on earth? Because I need to find out if there's more to life than quarterly reports and loan applications, Emma said, surprising herself with her candor. I need 2 weeks in Kyoto to figure some things out. Parker's expression was one of stunned delight. Does that mean? It means yes, Emma said, a smile breaking across her face like sunrise. Yes to Kyoto. Yes to possibilities. Yes to being as reckless and impulsive and alive as I've always been afraid to be. And then, to the utter astonishment of every First National employee present, Emma Sinclair, the most controlled, professional, by-the-book manager in the bank's history, stepped forward and kissed Parker Reed. Right there in the reception area, beside a vintage typewriter and a bouquet of burgundy dahlias. It wasn't a polite kiss. It wasn't a tentative kiss. It was the kiss of a woman breaking free from self-imposed constraints, discovering that the world didn't end when you colored outside the lines. When they finally broke apart, breathless and grinning, the bank erupted in applause. Well, Parker said, his forehead resting against hers. If I'd known typewriters would get that reaction, I'd have sent one weeks ago. Emma laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. It wasn't the typewriter, Parker, it was you. It's been you all along. So, what happens now? He asked, linking his fingers with hers. Now, Emma said decisively, I'm going to submit my 2 weeks' notice, pack for Japan, and see about finding someone to water my plants while I'm gone. And after Japan? Emma smiled, the future expansive and bright before her. After Japan, we'll improvise. I hear it's good for the soul. Parker's answering smile was everything. Improvisation it is. As they walked out of the bank hand in hand, Emma caught sight of the time on the grand clock in the lobby. For the first time in her adult life, she didn't care what time it was. She had more important things to focus on, like the extraordinary, imperfect, wonderful man beside her, and the realization that some investments couldn't be measured in dollars and cents. Some were measured in heartbeats and chances taken, in the courage to rewrite your own story. Epilogue. 1 year later. Emma's art gallery in the South End was nothing like her sister's bohemian space. Clean lines, minimalist design, and strategic. Lighting highlighted the main attraction. A collection of restored vintage typewriters, each with a unique story typed on crisp parchment paper beside it. The exhibition, titled Words Chosen Carefully, had drawn unexpected attention from collectors and tech enthusiasts alike. The Boston Globe's art section had run a feature just last week, praising the surprising intersection of technology, nostalgia, and modern narrative that defined the space. Ready for the investors? Olivia asked, adjusting a frame on the wall. The sisters now shared not just DNA, but a business partnership that leveraged both Emma's financial acumen and Olivia's artistic sensibilities. As ready as I'll ever be, Emma replied, smoothing her dress. a more relaxed silhouette than her former banker's uniform, but still polished and professional. The gallery door opened and Parker entered, leading a group of potential investors. His tech connections had proved invaluable in securing funding for their expansion plans. A second gallery focused on early computing history, set to open in New York next spring. "Ladies and gentlemen," Parker announced to the group, "allow me to introduce you to the most extraordinary investment opportunity of your lives, and the most extraordinary woman of mine." His eyes found Emma's across the room, still filled with the same wonder and delight as the day they'd met. As he launched into their business proposal, Emma fingered the vintage key hanging from a chain around her neck, the H key from her grandfather's typewriter, now mounted in the gallery's centerpiece display. Life hadn't followed her carefully, plotted spreadsheet. It had taken unexpected turns, deleted some planned milestones, and added entirely new chapters. But standing in her gallery, watching the man she loved champion their shared vision, Emma Sinclair knew one fundamental truth. The best stories were the ones you couldn't plan. They were the ones you lived, one carefully chosen word at a time.